For the vast majority of human history, the continent we now call Australia was known only by its original inhabitants. Their time here stretches back more than 65,000 years, a history so deep it defies easy comprehension. This immense stretch of time is often referred to as deep time, a silent age where the land itself was the primary chronicler of human existence. Our journey begins not at a bustling modern city, but in a place of profound stillness and desolation, Willandra Lakes region, located in the southwestern corner of New South Wales. Imagine a landscape utterly transformed. Today, the Willandra Lakes are dry, bleached basins, a stark, silent memorial to an era that has passed. But 40,000 to 50,000 years ago, this region was a thriving paradise. Lake Mungo was the largest of the interconnected waterways, a vast freshwater expanse fed by melted glacial ice teeming with life. The shores of Lake Mungo were once fertile and lush. The waters supported giant perch, cod, and shellfish. The surrounding grasslands sustained large marsupials, the megafauna, and smaller game. It was a haven of abundance and biodiversity, a perfect environment for a burgeoning human population. It was here, along these ancient, now dry shores, that a sophisticated and established human society flourished. These weren't merely transient groups passing through. These were communities that had learned to navigate and thrive within this unique and challenging environment for countless generations. They had deep knowledge of the seasons, the animals, and the spiritual sanctity of the land. This ancient, thriving ecosystem provides the essential backdrop to our story. It is from the silts and sands of this now empty lakebed that the most crucial discoveries about humanity's deep history in Australia would emerge. Two specific individuals, whose lives and legacies were preserved by the shifting sands, would ultimately force the world to rewrite the timeline of human migration and cultural sophistication: the Mungo Woman and the Mungo Man. Their presence here is not just an archaeological finding. It is a profound testament to the resilience, the ingenuity, and the spiritual depth of Australia's first inhabitants. Around 40,000 to 50,000 years ago, the environment surrounding Lake Mungo was a dynamic and productive ecosystem, vastly different from the arid landscape we see today. Glacial cycles meant the climate was cooler and wetter, supporting extensive woodlands of native pines, saltbush, and large grasslands, a true haven in the heart of the continent. The people of Mungo did not live alone. They shared their world with the remarkable Australian megafauna, colossal creatures that dwarf most of the animals we know today. These giant beasts were a constant, imposing feature of the Mungo landscape, and their interactions with the early human inhabitants form a fascinating chapter of history. Imagine seeing the Diprotodon, a massive, wombat-like marsupial the size of a rhinoceros, grazing near the waterholes. Or the formidable Procoptodon, the giant short-faced kangaroo, which stood over 2 meters tall and could weigh more than 200 kilograms. Swift and powerful, these creatures were likely challenging, if not impossible to hunt regularly, but their presence shaped the environment and the diet of the Mungo people. The lake itself was a focal point for survival. Fish, birds, and fresh water provided the staple diet. Archaeological evidence, such as ancient middens, refuse heaps, shows that the Mungo people were skilled hunter-gatherers, utilizing spear throwers and stone tools to hunt smaller game and efficiently harvest aquatic resources. Their life was one of intimate knowledge and deep resourcefulness. They understood the seasonal cycles of the lake, where the best hunting grounds were, and how to utilize every resource the ecosystem offered. This deep connection to the environment, born out of necessity and thousands of years of observation, would form the foundation of their spiritual and social structure. Crucially, the sheer duration of human presence here, tens of thousands of years, suggests a profound level of environmental adaptation. The Mungo people survived climate changes far more dramatic than any modern era has witnessed, proving their skill not only at sustaining themselves, but at thriving in a continually shifting, challenging world shared with giants. This thriving, vibrant, ancient Eden, full of water, life, and massive and imposing animals, was the stage upon which the Mungo Man and Woman lived, died, and were ultimately laid to rest, preserving a snapshot of human existence from the distant Pleistocene past. The discovery was made by a team of archaeologists led by Dr. Jim Bowler, a geomorphologist. Their work centered on the walls of China, a spectacular crescent-shaped dune formation known locally as a lunette along the eastern side of the dried-up lake bed. Erosion from wind and rain had continuously exposed and then recovered layer upon layer of ancient sediment, constantly challenging the land to reveal its truth. It was during one such erosion event that Dr. Bowler made an observation that would redefine the history of the continent. He discovered the partially exposed remains of a human being. These remains, a fragmented but substantial cremation burial, belonged to a young woman who was designated Lake Mungo 1, or LM1, now famously known as Mungo Woman. The finding itself was extraordinary. The body had been cremated. This ancient practice, involving intense heat and a highly ritualized process, immediately pushed back the accepted timeline for complex human behavior in Australia. Previously, scientists believed such sophisticated burial rites were confined to much later cultures in other parts of the world. The LM1 site showed evidence of a deep pit dug into the sand where the body was placed, likely surrounded by firewood and burned at extremely high temperatures. After the cremation, the remaining bones were deliberately gathered, pulverized, and placed back into a small, carefully prepared burial pit. This was not a casual interment. This was an act of profound social significance, reflecting organized thought, respect for the deceased, and an established tradition passed down through generations. Mungo Woman died tens of thousands of years ago, yet the care taken by her community speaks clearly across the ages. Radiocarbon dating on the site initially placed Mungo Woman's remains at around 26,000 years old, a stunning antiquity at the time. This discovery instantly confirmed that human habitation in Australia was far older than previously imagined, proving the early inhabitants possessed complex spiritual and social structures long before many cultures in Europe or Asia. The silent sands of the walls of China had yielded their first great secret, confirming that the early Australians were not merely survivors, but pioneers of complex cultural practice. Yet, the sands held an even greater, more dramatic secret yet to be revealed. Dr. Bowler was surveying an area of the lunette about 500 meters away from where the Mungo Woman was found. The conditions were harsh, with wind erosion continuously reshaping the dunes. It was this relentless erosion that exposed a scatter of bone fragments. Upon closer inspection, Dr. Bowler realized he was looking at the partially buried skeletal remains of a man. This discovery, designated Lake Mungo 3, or LM3, known to the world as Mungo Man, was instantly recognized as exceptional. Unlike Mungo Woman, Mungo Man was an intact burial. His body had been placed in the sand in a carefully measured, extended position, lying on his back with his hands interlocked in his lap. However, the most astounding element of the Mungo Man's burial was the ritual. The body had been generously covered in red ochre, a mineral pigment made from iron oxides. Red ochre was meticulously rubbed over his entire body before interment, a practice that is strongly associated with ritual, spirituality, and the symbolic connection to life and blood. This use of red ochre immediately demonstrated several things. First, it proved that the Mungo people were trading or traveling long distances, as the nearest known source of high-quality red ochre was hundreds of kilometers away. Second, the practice demonstrated a level of complex symbolic thought and spiritual devotion rarely attributed to human cultures of that extreme antiquity. Initial dating of the site provided a truly breathtaking age for the burial. While Mungo Woman was already ancient at 26,000 years, subsequent, more advanced dating methods placed Mungo Man's age closer to 40,000 to 42,000 years old. This made Mungo Man the oldest anatomically modern human remains found in Australia and, at the time of the discovery, among the oldest ceremonial burials ever found on Earth. The scientific world was forced to recalibrate. If humans were performing sophisticated rituals, trading goods across vast distances, and exhibiting such deep spiritual complexity 40,000 years ago in Australia, it meant the timeline for human development and global migration needed significant revision. The silent, preserved body of Mungo Man was now speaking across millennia, telling us that the first Australians were pioneers, philosophers, and deeply spiritual people who thrived on the continent tens of thousands of years earlier than most believed possible. When the age of the Mungo remains was confirmed at over 40,000 years for the man, the impact on global archaeological theory was immense. It provided powerful evidence for the out-of-Africa theory of human migration, showing that modern humans, Homo sapiens, had not only left Africa early, but had also successfully completed one of the most challenging migratory journeys on the planet. Their journey required astonishing ingenuity. To reach Australia, these early ancestors would have needed to cross several significant water gaps, even during periods of lower sea levels. They were skilled navigators, capable of building watercraft, likely rafts or canoes, and possessing the courage and foresight to undertake open-sea voyages. The Mungo discoveries fundamentally altered the perception of early human culture. Before Mungo Man, it was often assumed that complex ritual and sophisticated artistic expression first appeared in Europe during the Upper Paleolithic era, about 20,000 to 30,000 years ago. Mungo Man, with his use of red ochre, and Mungo Woman, with her complex cremation ritual, proved that symbolic thought and deep spirituality was already fully developed in Australia at least 40,000 years ago. The presence of red ochre, sourced hundreds of kilometers away, provided concrete proof of established trade networks. This suggests highly organized social groups capable of managing resources.
For the traditional owners of the Willandra Lakes region, the Pakanchi, the Muti, and the Nyampa nations, the Mungo Man and Woman are not artifacts of a distant past. They are the ancestral beings, the first people, whose spirits remain connected to the land through the enduring spiritual framework of the dreaming. Their existence confirms the oral histories and songlines passed down for countless generations, asserting the truth that we have always been here. This fundamental difference in perspective, archaeological subject versus sacred ancestor, led to decades of intense cultural and political tension. For many years, the remains were kept in storage at the Australian National University in Canberra, primarily for scientific study. However, the traditional custodians felt a deep spiritual responsibility to their ancestors. According to their law, the Mungo Man and Woman had been laid to rest in a particular way to ensure their spirits remained at peace with the land. Removing them from their resting place was seen as a profound spiritual violation that caused distress and imbalance within the community. The fight for repatriation, the return of the remains to their ancestral homeland, became a powerful symbol of the broader struggle for Aboriginal rights and recognition in Australia. The traditional owners argued that the spiritual welfare of the ancestors and the sanctity of the cultural site took precedence over further scientific study. The long and arduous campaign finally achieved success. In 1992, an agreement was reached for the remains to be returned to the care of the traditional owners at Lake Mungo. This was a monumental victory, recognizing the Aboriginal community's right to self-determination and spiritual custodianship. The return of the Mungo Man and Woman was more than just moving bones. It was an act of healing and reconciliation. It reaffirmed the unbroken spiritual link between the oldest Australians and their land. The remains now rest in a keeping place near Lake Mungo, where they are protected and honored by their descendants, awaiting a final resting place decided upon by the Aboriginal elders. This profound cultural connection transforms Lake Mungo from a simple archaeological site into a living, breathing place of memory, spirituality, and continuous custodianship. Archaeologists have painstakingly studied the ancient campsites around the Willandra Lakes, finding countless clues that detail the technological ingenuity of these early Australians. These sites, often preserved deep within the sediment layers, contain evidence of ancient hearths, fireplaces, middens, piles of food scraps, and a range of lithic artifacts, stone tools. The stone tool technology used by the Mungo people was remarkably efficient for their needs. They utilized locally available stone, primarily quartzite, to create simple flake tools. These weren't elaborate carved implements, but rather sharp multi-purpose flakes struck expertly from larger stones. These flakes were essential for butchering game, preparing fish, scraping hides, and shaping wood. The skill lay not in the complexity of the tool itself, but in the efficiency and speed with which these sharp edges could be produced when needed. The evidence of controlled fire is ubiquitous and crucial to the Mungo story. Ancient hearths found across the site demonstrate that fire was a central element of their existence, used for warmth, cooking, protection, and social gathering. The ability to control fire was a powerful technological advantage, enhancing the safety and quality of their lives. Perhaps the most comprehensive data comes from the ancient middens, which reveal the diversity of their diet. The Mungo people were masters of aquatic resource harvesting. Their diet included a wide variety of freshwater fish, such as Murray cod and golden perch, which they caught using spears or simple nets made from plant fibers. They also consumed large quantities of shellfish and mussels, leaving behind vast mounds of shells that helped preserve the sites. Beyond the water, their diet included eggs, small mammals such as wallabies and possums, and the occasional large bird like the emu. Plant resources were also heavily utilized, though less is preserved in the archaeological record. They undoubtedly gathered roots, seeds, and fruits following the seasonal availability. The archaeological record at Mungo paints a picture of a society that was highly adaptive and successful, maintaining a sustained, thriving existence in one location for tens of thousands of years. Their material culture, though simple, was perfectly tuned to the unique environment of the Pleistocene lake system. Around 25,000 years ago, the global climate began a slow, catastrophic shift. The world entered the peak of the last ice age, known as the Last Glacial Maximum. In Australia, this period did not necessarily mean intense cold, but it certainly meant extreme aridity, or dryness. The vast continental ice sheets in other parts of the world locked up enormous volumes of water, causing global sea levels to drop dramatically. Crucially for Lake Mungo, the major river systems that fed the Willandra Lakes began to fail. The regular inflow of glacial meltwater and rain diminished, initiating a long, irreversible process of aridification. Between 20,000 and 15,000 years ago, the thriving Pleistocene Eden began to collapse. The massive lake, which had been the lifeblood of the Mungo community, slowly shrank. The fish and shellfish populations dwindled and died. The lush grasslands that sustained the megafauna became sparse and withered. The entire ecosystem experienced a profound shock. Archaeological evidence shows the human response to this crisis. As the water retreated, the Mungo people did not simply abandon the area. They adapted to the contracting resources for as long as possible. But the land's capacity to support large communities was severely diminished. The drying process was relentless. As the lake beds were exposed, they became vulnerable to constant, powerful winds. The dry, fine sediments were lifted and carried eastward, forming the enormous crescent-shaped sand dunes known as the lunettes or the walls of China, the very formations that would one day hold and then reveal the secrets of Mungo Man and Woman. The collapse of the Willandra Lakes marked a pivotal moment in the history of Australia's first inhabitants. It forced a massive demographic shift, compelling people to move inland or along remaining river systems, scattering communities and requiring a new, even more profound level of adaptation to the newly formed, challenging desert landscape. The dry basin of Lake Mungo today is a silent, poignant testament to this colossal environmental collapse, a reminder that even the most established civilizations are ultimately reliant on the rhythms of nature. The designation as a World Heritage Site recognizes its dual significance, its incredible natural beauty, and its unique capacity to tell the story of early human migration and cultural development. However, maintaining the integrity of such an ancient and fragile environment presents enormous challenges. Paradoxically, the very forces of erosion that revealed Mungo Man and Woman, wind and water, are the same forces that continue to threaten the site today. The walls of China Lunette, rich with undiscovered artifacts and ancient burial sites, is constantly being worn away. Every major storm or persistent wind event risks destroying fragile evidence that has survived for millennia. The custodianship of the site is managed by a unique partnership model that is crucial to its preservation. It involves the NSW National Parks and Wildlife Service working hand in hand with the traditional owners, the Pakanchi, Muti, and Nyampa people. This collaborative model ensures that scientific research is conducted with full cultural respect and approval, balancing the demands of archaeology with the spiritual needs of the ancestral land.
The traditional owners are integral to the ongoing management of the area. They participate in all decisions regarding research, site interpretation, and conservation practices. Their deep inherited knowledge of the land, passed down through oral histories, is often invaluable to archaeologists in understanding ancient resource management and climate patterns. Furthermore, Mungo serves as a powerful symbol in the modern context. It is a vital educational resource, teaching both Australians and the world about the staggering antiquity and sophistication of Aboriginal culture. The site refutes the outdated notion of Aboriginal people as mere primitive hunter-gatherers, presenting them instead as sophisticated custodians of the environment and pioneers of global migration. The story of Lake Mungo today is one of ongoing vigilance, a commitment to protect the fragile desert environment so that the ancient secrets of the first Australians can continue to inform our understanding of humanity's long and complex journey. Their remains, preserved in the ancient sands, taught the world three enduring lessons. First, the lesson of time. Mungo Man and Woman radically reset our understanding of when modern humans achieved sophisticated cultural milestones. Their burial rites, cremation, and the use of red ochre speak of a spirituality and complex social organization that existed 40,000 years ago, demonstrating that cultural innovation was happening across the globe, not just in isolated pockets. Second, the lesson of resilience. These ancestors navigated a treacherous journey of migration and survived the dramatic collapse of their thriving lake system during the Last Glacial Maximum. Their ability to adapt, to innovate, and to maintain their cultural framework against overwhelming environmental adversity is a powerful testament to human tenacity. Third, the lesson of connection. For the traditional owners, Mungo Man and Woman are the proof of their continuous bond with the land, a bond that stretches back to the very moment of creation. The fight for repatriation and the ongoing custodianship of the site illustrate that this ancient history is not something that belongs only to the past. It is a living spiritual reality that shapes the present. The legacy of